I'm going to show you how to change the blades and set up the Rikon bandsaw. This is the model 10 325 14-inch, 1.5 horsepower motor. First thing you want to do, they have a bar under here which keeps the table together, makes it more stable for the blade itself. First thing you want to do is remove that bar. Alright, now you can loosen it, but I like to take it completely off. Use one of the supplied Allen wrenches that they give you. Alright, next thing you do is you tip the table as far as to go forward. Alright, just loosen up your handle on the side and turn that as far as you can. Alright, now you get in there with your Allen wrench again, and there's 4 bolts on the top you want to take off. By the way, I'm taking this top off because it's nearly impossible to get to those bottom bearings and adjust them. You just can't see the bearings with the top on. It only takes a few minutes to take the top off. So let me take those 4 bolts out and we'll get the top off, and I'll show you what else to do. I've got the 4 bolts loosened up. I've raised the blade guard as far as it's going to go. You just simply take it, lift it off. There you go. As I said, it takes about 5 minutes to take the top off. It's really no big a deal at all. Alright, once you have the top off, oh boy, I got a lot of dust on here. Make sure that you have the tension off of your belt, or excuse me, off of your blade. Alright. And then you just release the tension and the blade will come right off. Now, if you notice, I've taken off that plastic blade guard that they have down here. For me, it doesn't serve me any purpose. It just gets in the way of seeing things. Anyhow, once you get it off, move your door back. Take your blade and just slip it right out. Whoop. Okay, blade's off. Now, what you want to do is back off your bearings completely, because you're going to have them backed off when you're checking the tension on your blade. So to back them off, just loosen the bolt right there. There you go. Do the same for the bottom. Alright, I gotta get my new blade unpacked and I'll show you what else. I've got the blade on, and you can see the gullets are in the center of the wheel. The blade itself isn't in the center of the wheel. The gullets are in the center of the wheel. And I've loosened up the bottom, and all I have to do is turn this, right, and the bearings will go back. Alright, so move that back a little farther. But anyhow, so now I've got the bearings away from the blades and I can start adjusting them again. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get the bearings as close to the blade as you can without touching it. The bottom bearing, as I said, is more difficult, and there's a bearing in the back. Right? So unless you get down there and look, you're not going to see it. And in order to adjust these bearings, let me just put this flashlight down. In order to adjust the bearings, what you do is, first of all, you loosen the bearing up with your Allen wrench, and then you adjust it with the micro adjuster there. So I'm going to do that. However, prior to doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get this blade tensioned to where it should be. And again, make sure that you have your blade in the center, the collets, and not the blade itself. So let me tension this up. And then what I'm going to do after I get it tensioned up, I'm going to spin it a few times. I'm going to make sure that it's riding on the wheel like it should ride. I can see this, it's going a little to the back, so I'll just change that around just a little. And it's going to be easier to release the tension and pull it over first. But you want to make sure that it's tracking right before you plug it in. Once you got it plugged in and it's not tracking right, it will pop off the wheels. So let me just put the camera down because I can't do it with one hand. As I was saying, the bottom bearings are always a problem, so I just removed it. It's very simple. You take off the one bolt and the whole bearing mechanism will come right out. Now this company, which is the wood slicer from where did I get that from? Highland Woodworking, recommends that the deflection be for a saw with 12-inch or thereabouts. The deflection would be 3/8 to a 1/2 inch. So I simply 3/8, yeah, 3/8. So I simply clamped a ruler down and I've tensioned it up. And when I push on it, I can go over just about 3/8 of an inch. I could hit 1/2 inch if I really press, but that amount of pressure is good. Smaller blades require less tension, maybe a 1/4 inch, but you can do the same thing. Now, if you don't take your table off, you're really not going to be able to get these blades tensioned right because you've got the bearings. As you can see, if these bearings are over here, then you're pushing as far as you can, but then it's going to hit the bearing. So you're really not tensioning. So you do have to take the bearings out of the way, and that's why I would say take the table off. So I've got it tensioned now. I'm going to put my bearing back on. So it's very simple to just take this and put it back on. All right. I'll tighten it up, and then what I want to do is fine tune the bearings. The back one should be just barely away from the blade, and the same with the sides. You don't want the bearings to hit the blades at all. And I do have it all tracking right now, as you can see. It's tracking right into the center of it, so everything's good there. It's adjusted, it's tracking. The only thing left to do are the bearings. Alright, so if you notice now, these bearings are just behind the collets. And in order to do that, you have to loosen this bolt up and bring this backwards and forwards. You can't do it with the fine-tuning adjustment very well. I mean, you can, but you want to get it as close as you can before you start doing with the fine-tuning adjustment. So loosen this one up, bring your bearings back and forth, but keep your eye on the bottom bearing. All right. So as you can see how far that is away, and if you try to adjust the top bearings, you may find that you don't have enough room to adjust the bottom bearing. So adjust your top bearings so they're just behind the gullet, and then come down, loosen the bearing up, which I already have, and then you just turn the fine-tuning adjustment, which is this. You just turn that until you get the bearing to where you want to get it. All right, which is just so you can just barely see a hair. All right, so there. Now tighten that up. This just takes a lot of fooling around with. Next, I'll go back and I'll adjust these bearings, and again loosen them up and then adjust it with the fine-tuning adjustment. Same for the top. So let me get that done. All right, I've got the top bearings adjusted. It took about 10 minutes. There's a couple things you have to be careful of. First of all, make sure that you have your adjustment for the bar going up and down. Make sure that's tight, otherwise it's going to be wiggling around. And on these bearings you have several adjustments. You have this one right here, which moves the bearings back and forth. And for that one, you want to make sure that you have the bearings right behind the gullets of the blade. The second one is this one right here. All right, and what that will do will allow you to center these two bearings. If that's pushed over one way or the other too much, your blade is going to be hitting the left or the right bearing, and when you try to compensate for it, you're really pulling it out of alignment. So you want to make sure that you do your rough adjustment with this to get the bearings back and forth, and in and out, you use this one as the rough. Once you get the rough adjustments done, then go down and start doing the fine adjustments. And again, same as before, loosen up the bearing with the Allen wrench. Use your fine-tuning adjustment to get it back and forth. And you've got the back bearing in here also, so you've got to make sure that you have the back bearing just so that it just doesn't touch it, but if you put the least amount of pressure on it, it will touch it. All right. So right now I've got all the bearings back together. All I have to do is put the top back on. The bearings are adjusted, the tension's adjusted, the tracking's adjusted. So I'm going to put the top back on, and then we'll give it a try. Got everything put all back together. Just keep in mind that everything you touch is going to have an effect on something else, especially these upper bearings. When you raise and lower your blade, it has a tendency to move in and out and sideways and backwards, and so double check your spacings at different settings on your blade and different heights, and make sure that you've got the bearings set just right. Now, in order to do the job, you're going to have a 13 millimeter wrench and a 10 millimeter wrench, as well as the tools that come with the saw, your Allen wrenches that they supply with you. While I was doing the video, I took the opportunity to make another tip on how to put the table back on. So take a look at that video. Make it a lot easier when you put the top back on than trying to just put it back on and bolt it down. And this video will be continued on to another video which I'm doing, which is comparing the wood slicer bandsaw blade to the Timberwolf bandsaw blade. So now that I have everything set up, I can go to my next video, and I've already tested out the Timberwolf blade, so I'm going into the wood slicer blade and see which is a better blade.